Canada, your neighbor is probably starving right now, and you may not have even known it. Because our country, one of what's considered to be the wealthiest countries on earth, blessed with endless farmland, resources, and opportunity, just received a overall D grade on fighting poverty and food insecurity. A D. Not even a C minus that you could argue shows room for improvement of some sort. We got a D from our own food banks nationally. And here's the part that should make every single Canadian furious this morning. Poverty in this country has risen by, brace yourself, 40% in just the last 2 years. 40%. That's not just a number. That's millions of people you know, falling through the cracks in our Canadian system. While this government spends its time on photo ops, national projects that are already far underway, global handshakes, and self-congratulation for stealing other people's ideas. This is a scary situation in Canada, and it could involve people you know, maybe even people in your family. Let's go.
Welcome to Bakes on Things.
The impact of the cost of living is at the center of a new report released today on poverty levels in this country. Food Banks Canada is out with its National Poverty Report Card that includes some pretty bleak findings as well as some emerging positive indicators. CTV's Renee Rogers is standing by with more on that. So how did our country score, Renee?
Well, not great, Marcia. Food insecurity and poverty, believe it or not, up by almost 40% nationally over the past 2 years. That is according to Food Banks Canada's National Poverty Report Card, which for 2025 gave Canada's poverty reduction efforts a grade of D. Now, that grade is an average of 3 criteria. You can see them on your screen. Our overall grade is D. For unemployment, which went into that overall grade, we get even worse. We get an F. The report says joblessness is up by 34% since 2023, with youth feeling it the most. Then on food insecurity, another failing grade, with more than a quarter of households struggling to afford food, and that is up from just over 18% in 2023. With visits to food banks up by 90% since 2019, according to Food Banks Canada, the CEO of Toronto's Daily Food Bank is encouraging Canadians to push for change. Take a listen.
There are opportunities for us to knock on the doors of every elected official. It doesn't matter which level of government, and say, today is the day to build a better Canada. We deserve better than a D on our report card, and we can do it.
And in terms of solutions, what's being proposed, Renee?
Well, Food Banks Canada is recommending the government prioritize 3 poverty reduction strategies. The first one is committing to reducing food insecurity in Canada by 50% by 2030. So that is quite a big number just over the next 5 years or so. The other thing that it recommends is enshrining automatic tax filing into law. It says that would unlock billions in unclaimed benefits for low-income Canadians. Thirdly, it says that Canada needs to review and modernize supports for low-income workers, such as unemployment insurance and the Canada Disability Benefit. But of course, Marcia, we know with federal priorities shifting towards fiscal restraint and defense spending, it does remain to be seen how much the Carney government will commit to poverty reduction measures. Now, we were expecting to see the budget in October, but now, according to CTV News chief political correspondent Vashi Kapelos, sources are telling her that until November.
Well, you saw it there, and there's some things that they conveniently left out. By the way, that story that CTV did on all of this, despite this just coming out, was about 3 pages down. I wonder why. Anyway, welcome back to Bakes on Things. I'm Chris Baker. Don't forget to like, subscribe, hype, and comment on this video. Let's stop sugarcoating this. 1 in 4 Canadians is now dealing with food insecurity. That means that your neighbor, your kid's classmate, or maybe even you are the ones worrying about running out of food right now. now, cutting meals to stretch what's in the pantry, or in some cases, going entire days without eating at all. We're hearing stories from local teachers even now that this is happening with students not even bringing in lunches anymore. Think about that. In Canada, 2025, people are starving while the Prime Minister flies off to announce commitments to other countries or happens to sit by fires with some of our most rich premiers at their Muskoka cottages drinking whiskey. None of this is abstract. It's kids sitting in classrooms with empty stomachs, unable to concentrate because breakfast was just a glass of tap water. It's single parents lying to their kids saying, "I'm not hungry tonight, so you just eat," while secretly hoping that the food bank opens up tomorrow because they really need it. It's seniors after a lifetime of paying taxes and contributing to this country, to this country's tax base, to this country's revenues, now quietly skipping meals because their pension doesn't stretch far enough to cover 3 meals a day, to cover the rent, to cover their medication, or to cover their groceries, at least not all at once. Food insecurity in Canada isn't just about nutrition. It's about dignity. It's about just getting the food at all. In some cases, people don't even care what they're eating anymore as long as they have something to eat. It's about the humiliation of standing in line at a food bank while knowing your government would rather spend billions abroad in Ukraine than ensure that you can put a meal on the table here in Canada. It's about the ripple effects. Children who grow up undernourished and smaller than they ever would have been because they didn't get the vitamins and minerals that they needed to grow. Children who face long-term health problems, families in crisis that fall deeper into debt as they try to cover for food, and communities fracture under the weight of all of this desperation. And we know this. When nearly 25% of your population is living this reality, that's not a problem. It's a crisis. And there are other categories we got complete Fs in that CTV conveniently in that article, but also in the news clip, did not report. And the cruel irony is that Canada produces enough food to feed tens of millions more people than we actually have here in Canada. So how is this even possible? We export beef, wheat, canola, seafood, you name it, we know that. Yet 1 in 4 Canadians can't eat properly. That's like living beside Niagara Falls and dying of thirst. It's proof not of scarcity, but of failed priorities by this Liberal government in particular, because most of these Fs were received in the last 2 years, not even just the last 11 that they've been in power. This is recent. This is about last year and this year. Food Banks Canada is spelling this out very, very clearly. They shouldn't be the ones holding this government accountable for all of this, holding this country together. Food Banks Canada is the one handing out the food. But instead, they have to do studies like this because the government won't. Charities were never meant to be the first line of defense against poverty, ever in this country. And yet, here we are, relying on volunteers and donations and that organization to create reports like we just saw, to make sure Canadian families don't starve. That's a national disgrace. We should be ashamed of ourselves as a country. The unemployment rate for young Canadians, we know, has climbed by 1/3 since 2023. That's contributing to all of these grades. That's 2 years of young workers being left out in the cold while EI programs and temporary foreign worker programs remain stuck in the 1990s, remain overwhelmingly a problem in terms of getting youth jobs. Do you know how many Canadians now work gig jobs? Contract jobs, part-time jobs? This government hasn't even begun to adapt policy to reflect that reality. If you're delivering food through an app or other food delivery sources or freelancing just to scrape by, good luck getting meaningful support from anything that this government does when times get tough, because you don't qualify for EI, you don't qualify for the supports if you lose that role. It's like they've built a system that refuses to even see you, and yet all you're trying to do is feed your children and keep a roof over their heads. This is terrible government priority. This is horrible government mismanagement, and it's happened for the last 11 years. And here's the real kicker. We can afford to fix this, by the way. We can do something about this. We can afford to ensure Canadians don't go hungry, but they just have to want to do it. They have to just start to take the action. But the government chooses not to. Billions are shipped overseas for foreign wars and photo ops. We could use some of that here to end this issue with our own citizens. Billions are earmarked for green projects that never get built. Billions are wasted on bureaucracy, consultants, new offices to approve big projects that are already well underway, and friends of the Liberal Party. Meanwhile, Canadian families are being told to stretch their Kraft dinner into 3 meals and hope inflation doesn't heat up, because then we're going to have to shrinkflation that Kraft dinner box. And then what's left of your paycheck even after that? This isn't incompetence anymore. It really is infuriating, because this is absolute negligence. If you can grow poverty by 40% in just 2 years while still claiming you're building a stronger middle class, like we are somehow Canada strong, then you're either lying to Canadians or you're living in such an elite bubble that you don't see the suffering all around you. And unfortunately, Liberal voters, yes, I'm talking to you directly, are highly, highly responsible for this, because a lot of you Liberal voters live in that bubble that refuses to see what's going on outside of your own home and your own neighborhood street. But here are things that need to change. Food Banks Canada says this. They say that the government needs to double down on social safety net. And they're right. But let's go a lot further here, because Canadians don't just need, this isn't a small problem anymore. We don't just need tweaks. We need a complete reset in some way here. What can we do to help our own people to succeed, to be able to afford the life they lead in this country? First, employment insurance has to be modernized from the ground up. It's not modern in any way. It doesn't include gig economy, part-time roles, anything like that. The current system was designed in the 1990s, and it has a 1990s flair. It's not Rick Astley anymore. It's time to get with the times. Full-time jobs with benefits were the norm back then. The world doesn't exist, that world, I should say, doesn't exist anymore. Millions of Canadians are working as Uber drivers, freelance designers, skip the dishes, Amazon delivery couriers, or contract employees with no benefits and no security. Contract employees are up over 25% in just the last 5 years, with more companies contracting out than anything before. These people pay taxes, they contribute, they deserve protection from our systems, and EI must be rewritten so that if you work, you're covered in some way, because these people all aren't right now, no matter how that work is structured. So second, we also must need to do this with food. Food must be treated as essential infrastructure. Why is it not an essential service, not just a consumer good? We have national strategies for pipelines, for airports and roads, but not for food security. That has to change. I mean, what are our citizens to do? You brought in all these extra citizens now too. So what do you want to do there? Essential groceries should be tax-free across the board, not just selectively exempt items, but a true recognition that food is a necessity, not a luxury. Even the cheap sundries portions, the chips, all of those things, that might be all a family can afford. The government should invest in lowering transportation and storage costs for Canadian farmers and food producers, so those savings actually reach our consumers. And policies that punish farmers with things like red tape, carbon taxes, and other things that drive up costs, all of this stuff on farming, on fuel, all of these restrictions that limit supply, all of them must be scrapped immediately. Pierre Poilievre is right. Those things must go in order to affect these prices to reduce this problem. Third, redirect wasted spending until Canadians are fed. That means hitting pause on any vanity projects and any foreign aid that's just a nice to have. Stop making foreign aid commitments until we can guarantee that no Canadian child is going to bed hungry or going to school tomorrow without a lunch. If the federal government has money to fund consultants, overseas summits, their own summits, meetings upon meetings, things they get together for at hotels in Toronto, corporate bailouts, then it damn well has the money to make sure Canadians can afford to eat. That is the bottom line. Nobody can argue that from any political side. The government has the money to help fix this problem. Fourth, empower provinces and municipalities to help innovate this as well. Ottawa doesn't have all the answers, and they need to stop acting like they think they do. Provinces should be given real flexibility and funding to pilot new ideas like targeted grocery rebates, locally run school meal expansions, and things like urban agriculture programs that we don't see enough of. We got a little wave of that about a decade ago, and then it kind of went away. When you decentralize, you get solutions tailored to the realities of your local communities around you rather than one size fits all talking points across the country. Somebody's problems in the middle of the GTA have nothing to do with the problems being experienced in Tuktoyaktuk. And we have to start realizing that as a country. And finally, make poverty reduction a political priority at all times with measurable targets that are constantly checked and verified. Enough of the vague promises. Canadians deserve hard numbers. Reduce food insecurity by half within 5 years. That's got to be done. That was the suggestion of the food bank. Lower youth unemployment by 25%, and you will help that dramatically. And do that within the next 3 years. Cut reliance on food banks by 30% within 2 years. That's what we've got to do. And if the government can't hit those benchmarks, then they have failed their people and should face the consequences at the ballot box. That's the bottom line. This is a resolvable issue, and it's resolvable by things we are doing or cutting things we are doing elsewhere. It is time to turn back the focus on a Canadian citizen, not someone in Ukraine, not someone overseas, not someone in Davos, not the climate change happening in Germany, here. So yes, the Liberals just earned a D. They really earned an F on a lot of those categories, but it balanced out to a D. But here's the truth. A D means you passed, barely, and that's wrong. This is an F. On every metric that matters most, it's an FFF, triple F if that existed. Poverty, food insecurity, youth unemployment, overreaching governments, and wildly out of control immigration. The government has failed Canadians, and no amount of staged announcements, no shiny new acronyms, no recycled campaign slogans can cover that up. Not one. Canadians do not need another press conference about this. We need to know at a press conference that this has been done. Not that it's coming, not that you have this idea, but that this is done, that these are already in action and rolled out in communities. We don't need another promise of momentum. We need leaders who will prioritize feeding our own citizens before feeding their egos. And until then, the only grade this government deserves is the one Canadians will hand them at the ballot box eventually, because we cannot sustain this Liberal inaction for much longer. It's no longer a political joke. It's no longer fodder for memes. It's no longer angry comments. It is a problem. It is a massive, massive problem, and this government is doing nothing about it. We'll see you tomorrow.